Are you too old? It's a question many of us will ask ourselves at some point in our life and not just once. Am I too old to go back to school? Am I too old to go to a bar? Am I too old to rock climb? Am I too old to start a business? It's a question you might find that you're asking right now about writing. Maybe you're looking for a hobby, a second career, or curious what it would be like to be a novelist or a freelance writer. Regardless of what age you are, you can start at any time. I was 48 when I began writing seriously. And what I mean by seriously is changing my mindset from writing as a hobby to writing as a career. At the time, I didn't question if I was too old. So age wasn't a concern, not at first. I was at a writing conference a month ago and I was looking around and there was a sea of silver and gray haired people, many with less than 10 years in the writing industry and several successful. I recently read that the average age of a writer is 42. According to Late Bloomer, as one gets older and wiser, one is able to handle complex tasks like writing a novel. That has something to do with the brain's myelination, but I'm not really too sure about that because synapses tend to move a little slower as you get older. But there is definitely something that happens as you get older. You have less insecurities about who you are and what you can do, what you can accomplish. As a result of experience, you have better self mastery than you did in your 20s. We've gone through some things and we've survived. And we recognize our time on earth is finite. So why not take the leap? Here's a few well known authors who were over 40 when they published their first book: Raymond Chandler, Alex Haley, Tony Hillerman, Toni Morrison, Sue Monk Kidd. Age didn't stop them, and neither should it stop you. As I continued on in my writing to publish journey, I started to feel pressure about my late start. Like I was behind and needed to do a lot of catching up. I experienced a tennis volley of self defeating thoughts. How come I didn't discover writing as my passion earlier? How did I miss that this is the it for me? And where would I be had I begun writing in my 20s? Well, the truth is, in my 20s, writing was nowhere in my mind. Mid 30s, it started percolating, but I wasn't thinking anything about writing fiction. When you're faced with self defeating thoughts, and you will be when you're in this writing journey, you have two choices: give in or go big. And I chose to go big. Okay, so you can't use age as your excuse not to write. And the whole idea of being too old to write is just a bunch of hooey. But before you take the leap and go big, you'll need to prepare yourself realistically for what publishing requires. To write stories and publish, there are practicalities to consider. And in today's video, I'm going to discuss the big T's, the why we do what we do, resources, time, money, and our experience needed to do what we do, and the importance of knowing your limits. And afterwards, you'll be better equipped to plan your next writing move: a career, a hobby, or simply a fun endeavor. Pressure. That's what I was feeling about 9 months into this career decision. But the pressure I put on myself to catch up pushed me. It gave me an intense focus and drive to achieve, to go after the dream. I'm not encouraging you to place undue pressure on yourself. And in fact, I have conversations with myself around managing that pressure because it can tip the scales into crazy town. You know, when you don't leave the house for days because you have to get this story written. It's not a race, I remind myself, and that is an important message for all of us. Publishing a book is not a race, and applying that kind of pressure can turn something you love into something you dread. Working full time, I churned out 5 books in less than 3 years, and working like that can cause burnout. So be realistic about your expectations, what you can do, so that you don't burn yourself out. The impetus for me to write happened through a serendipitous interaction. And whenever doubt creeps into my head about writing and publishing, I fall back on that interaction, how following my internal guidance was spot on. And I am reminded again I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. If you're anywhere along this writing to publish journey, you know that there are many doubts that will arise. We need those big T's, those ideas and beliefs that fall into the big truth category. You'll need to ground yourself in those big T's, the whys, so that when you're pulling out your hair, disappointed about a negative review you got, or received another rejection from an agent, the why will keep you motivated. Let's talk about our resources. I recently read that the average salary of a writer is $20,000. That isn't much to live on, and although you and I aren't shooting for average, we still need to be realistic about our time and money and our experience levels. Many years ago, I left a decent paying job to start a business. Eventually, that business was successful, but I know what it's like to not have an income while raising a family and owning a home. So 20 years later, as I was starting my writing business, I knew I didn't want to do that again. I work full-time now, and I really like my salary, health insurance, and the contributions to my retirement. I'm not willing to eat top ramen or be homeless. Therefore, I'm realistic about the resources I have. At this point in my life, I won't give up my salary unless I have a comparable salary to step into. That in itself, for me, creates another degree of motivation, a goal, if you will. I'm fortunate that my full-time job allows me a great deal of flexibility. I have time I might not have otherwise. And time is an important resource. And understanding how much time you have to devote to writing and publishing can help you manage your expectations. I manage my expectations by being realistic as to what I can do and when, and knowing what my priorities are. None of what I do for the most part feels like work. I enjoy it all. It keeps me interested and energized. And I also have an agreement with myself that at any time, if any of these activities are no longer fun, if they feel like work, the drudgery kind, I'm going to walk away. I won't spend my resources on something I don't overall enjoy. This is the benefit of having a paying job. I don't feel the pressure of having to make my mortgage or pay utilities through my writing business. And for me, that keeps this thing fun. But a question you may ask yourself is, how do I do it? And how do I do it well? And do I have a life? Balance and structure is the key for me, and I balance my life through meditation, exercise, sleeping, eating right, and at least once a week I participate in some sort of social activity. Sometimes you don't know what your limits are until they're pushing back at you. But to avoid burnout, you need to know your limits and give yourself a break when you are reaching those limits. I write 6 hours a day, 3 days a week. I start around 9 a.m. and end around 3 p.m. That's my writing work schedule. This way I don't burn out and I have time for other things in my life. Like you, I dream about fully immersing myself in this writing world. And when that does happen, I'll have more time for areas that are a little neglected. In the end, no pun intended, it isn't whether or not it's too late for you to start writing, but rather what you're willing to give up. To pursue a passion, to start a business, you're going to give up something, a lot of somethings. There are keys at any age to sustaining a writing career, and that is to know the why of what you are doing, your resources and limits, and how to stay balanced. That wraps up today's video. You are not too old to start writing. And if you're ready to start, check out my video on Jumpstart Your Writing. The link is below. If in your writing to publish journey, you find an area you feel you're lost in, for example, how do you market your novel or trying to find your next plot move, Check out my consultation services via my website, www.carmenkatie.com. There's only one thing left for you to do. Click the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. We'll see you next time.